All right, hey guys, I cannot stress enough. Welcome, by the way. 8.4 special products. I cannot stress enough the importance of the last two lessons. If you are struggling with the last two lessons, I highly encourage you to practice a little bit more, maybe review the videos. You are going to need those skills for the next couple of years. So we're going to be doing a lot with those skills. And we're going to be practicing them a little bit more today, but the more comfortable you are with those basics, the more comfortable you'll be with this kind of stuff. So very soon we're going to be graphing parabolas, and it's going to all relate to the math that we're doing right now. And 8.4, we are getting into we're really getting into factoring, which is probably one of the hardest things in Algebra 1, but if you pay attention to like the first few lessons, it's actually not bad at all. It's actually kind of fun. So I really need you guys to pay special attention to the special product lesson here. But it basically, the first couple lessons of this chapter is what all of factoring is built on. Okay, so, and we use that a ton. We use it, in every math from now on. So here we go, guys. 8.4 special products. What we're going to look at is if we have essentially a binomial multiplied by a binomial, like what that does for us, but there's special circumstances. For instance, if I have something squared, okay, what our instinct might tell us to do here when you have a plus b squared, what you might be thinking is, oh, I'm just going to distribute, this is the most common mistake I see, I'm just going to distribute my squared to both things inside. But that's not really what this is saying. When you square something, you guys, what it's saying is you're taking whatever's being squared. In this case, since there's parentheses, it's this whole thing, a plus b, and you're multiplying it by itself, a plus b. And then you're doing what we did last lesson, right, where we took a times a times b, and then we go b times a, b times b. We called it foiling last lesson. Okay, so we have to foil when you see something like this. And when you do that, there's a pattern that will always arise. Okay, every single time you do this, you'll always get the first term squared, so in this case that's a, plus 2 times the two terms. So this would be a, b. Okay, and since we started with addition, this will be plus as well. This will always be plus. This plus and plus if it's addition. And this would be plus the last thing squared. Okay, so when you do it out, that's what you're always going to get. It'll always be that. And I'm just going to prove that to you really quick, okay, because I think it's important. So a times a is a squared, right? A times b is positive ab. B times a, now you can write that in any order that you want, so I encourage people to just put it in alphabetical order. So b times a is just a times b, same thing, right? And then plus b times b, which is b squared. Okay, so this gives me, these are like terms, so they come together, a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, so just wanted to point that out there. All right, and if these graphics help you, for me, sometimes these graphics make things a little bit more difficult, but for some people they're useful. I'm not going to go into it right now with that, but we'll do some of that in class maybe. So it says use the distributive property to factor the polynomial. It seems like it's already factored, but let's just FOIL it all out. Okay, maybe it means to FOIL this whole thing out. So if I'm going to do this, remember that it's going to be the first term squared. So what I could put in here is I can put in here like you could treat this whole thing, I know it's weird all the different letters, but you could treat this whole thing like a in this thing, right? So this would be 8c squared plus 2 times 8c times 3d plus 3d squared. Okay, you don't have to do it this way, but this is a little shortcut instead of foiling it all out. Okay, so again, 8c plus 3d squared just means that you're multiplying it by itself, right? So I can show you both ways. 8c squared, since there's no plus signs in there, I'm just squaring each piece. So that's 64c squared. And then we have 2 times 8c times 3d. So 2 times 8 times 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 8 is 48. So I'll say plus 48 cd. Plus 3 squared is 9. D squared is d squared. Right? So you could do it that way. Or we could go back to the last lesson and we can just FOIL this out, right? Which is not a bad way to do it either. It's just a little more time consuming with one extra step, right? So 8 times 8 is 64. I don't know why I put 86. So here 8 times 8 is 64 c squared. 8c times ac. And then plus, this will be 24 cd when you do this guy out. And then let's switch colors here. We'll go to black. So then 3d times 8c is plus 24 cd. And then 3 times 3 is 3d times 3d, it would be plus 9d squared. Okay, so it looks similar to this, but we still have to do some combining of these guys, right? So the only thing that helps make a skip here is that this kind of tells you to combine those ahead of time, right? So when I combine those, I'll get 48. So I get 64c squared plus 48cd plus 9d squared. Same exact answer, just different ways of looking at it. Okay, so that's example 1. Here's 1b, and I encourage you to do this one on your own. The answer is already on the screen, so pause it and go ahead and see if you guys can do it out on your notes there. So notice that the a term here is 3x, the b term is 4y, so I can plug those things in, right? So I would have 3x squared plus 2 times 3x times 4y plus 4y squared. Okay, so when I do that, 3 squared is 9, so I have 9x squared. 2 times 3 times 4 is 24 xy. 4 squared is 16 y squared. Okay? Or you can FOIL the whole thing out. 3 times 3 gives me 9. X times x is x squared, so 9x squared plus 12xy plus 12xy plus 16y squared. These combine to 24xy. Okay, so, it's not too bad to go the other way if you don't like remembering the little rule. I'm going to tell you this, though. If you remember the rules of how these work, later on, it'll save you a lot of time. So I would spend some time and energy remembering that rule, because you'll use it a ton. But if you never learn it, you're just going to have to go through the foiling process repeatedly for the next couple of years, which is not a bad thing either. Okay, the square of a difference is a little bit different. Let's do it the old school way just to see what the pattern is, okay? So, but it's very similar. So we have a minus b essentially times a minus b. So when I FOIL this one out, I get a squared, okay, minus ab minus ab, and then negative b times negative b is actually positive b squared. Okay, so notice, it still starts and ends the same way. In the middle, though, instead of adding the two, we're subtracting them. So this will be a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So the only thing that's different is this guy right here. Okay, that's the only thing different. If this is negative, then the first piece is negative. But you will always, and you might need to pause the video and ponder this for a while, you will always add here. Okay, you'll always add that if we're squaring a binomial. The reason is a negative times a negative is a positive times a positive is a positive, so no matter what, that last term will always be positive. Okay, so just keep that kind of straight. Okay, here we go. Let's move on to 2a now. So now we're doing some differences. Okay, so I'm going to take the shortcut way here. So I could say that 6p squared, right? First term squared, minus 2 times the two terms. Sorry for the screaming child in the background. And then we're going to add the last thing squared, so 1 squared. Okay, so this becomes 36p squared minus 12p, and actually, let's see here. We should probably, treat this just as a positive one. I apologize. It's just look at the numbers because we're subtracting here out front, right? So sorry. So this would be minus 2 times 6, which is in times 1, which is 12p plus 1. Okay. Or you could FOIL it out. Okay, and if you FOIL it out, you'll get 36p squared minus 6p minus 6p plus 1. So that's 36p squared minus 12p plus 1. Same exact answer, right? So whichever way you prefer. But again, this way will save you a little bit of time in the future. Okay, so for 2b, I want you to pause the video and try that one out on your own. Okay, but for 2b, remember first thing squared, a squared minus, and then it'll be 2 times a times 2b, and then plus 2b squared. So that's a squared minus 4ab plus 4, because this squared is happening to both things, remember, 4b squared. All right, so that's 2b. Now, there's a cool application piece here. So it says Alano has a garden that is g feet long and g feet wide. He wants to add 3 feet to the length and to the width. Okay, so it says show how the new area of the garden can be modeled by the square of a binomial. So his garden right now, we know that to find area, if it's g feet long and g feet wide, we know that it's a square, right? It's a square g by g. Okay, if we want to add 3 to both of these, now to find the area, it's g plus 3 times g plus 3, or g plus 3 squared. Okay, so either one of those is fine. I would encourage you to use that one. Then what we're going to do to find the actual square of this binomial is we're going to just plug that into what we know. So it'll be the first term squared, g squared, plus, because this is plus 2 times g times 3. Okay, it's this piece times that piece, right? Plus the last piece, which is 3 squared. So that simplifies to g squared plus 6g plus 9. That's the square of the binomial. All right. So if you want to know the area, the new area, you'd have to plug it into this guy to figure that out. All right. So you could then, if I could expand this and I could say, okay, now that you know that g was equal to 5 feet, then you could just plug a 5 into your new equation there, and it'll give it to you, right? It'll give you the new area. All right, so the product of a sum and a difference. Now look, guys, everything that we've been doing has just been squares. So we're multiplying the same thing by itself. Now we're doing that with the same type of term, but with different signs. Okay, so let's see what happens when we do this one. And this will be the last thing that we do. Okay, so if it's a positive and a negative, what happens? Okay, so watch. A times a is a squared. A times positive b is plus ab. Negative b times a is negative ab. And then negative b times b gives me negative b squared. So look, what happens here, which is interesting and very useful later, is that the middle guys cancel out. And what I'm left with is a squared minus b squared. Okay, we're going to do that in reverse later on. But for now, it's very important to see that those middle terms cancel out whenever you have a change. If you have the same exact terms with different signs, the middle will always cancel, and you're left with the first thing squared minus the second thing squared. That'll always be the case. So here we have that exact thing. So I know without doing any kind of foiling, this is where it's a big time saver comes in, is that this will always be the first thing squared minus the second piece squared. Okay, so 2 squared is 4, right? And I'm done. That's all I have to do. If you remember the rule. If you don't remember the rule, then you're stuck, doing this whole thing out. Oh, by the way, be very careful. The first thing squared, 3n squared minus, we should do this because we did make a mistake there. Hope maybe one of you guys caught that, which would be awesome. But anyway, 3 squared is 9. So the final answer, I should have used parentheses, is 9n squared minus 4. Okay, make sure to use so that's actually a really good teaching point right there, teaching moment, is that when you do this little trick, use parentheses on the first term and the second term so that you remember to distribute that squared out to everything inside. Okay, so that's 4a. Let's look at 4b, and I encourage you to do this one on your own, so pause the video, try this one out. But let's do this. I'm going to use the shortcut method here. So I'm going to take 4c. Okay, these are the same things with addition and subtraction. So I know the pattern. It's going to be the first thing squared minus the second thing squared. So let's actually square that out. So we get 4 squared is 16c squared minus 49d squared. There's your answer. If you wanted to check yourself, or if you were not comfortable with that, you could FOIL it out. So 4 times 4 is 16c squared, and then we'd have plus 28cd, but then we have minus 28cd, so those go away, and then we have minus 49d squared. All right, that's it for this time, you guys. Have fun with special products. We'll do a lot more in class.